Imagine a city so scared of its own fate that it buried two young women alive to stop the world from ending. This isn't a legend. This is what Rome actually did.
The city of Rome was in shock. Smoke rose from the fields beyond the walls, carrying the smell of death and defeat. Rumors spread like wildfire. Hannibal has destroyed our army. The Battle of Cannae had ended with nearly 70,000 Roman soldiers lying dead. Families searched for names, hoping their sons weren't among them. Women wept in the streets, while old men stared silently at the Capitoline Hill, whispering prayers to the gods. In the Senate, chaos ruled. Senators shouted over each other. Some demanded peace, others cried for revenge. But beneath the noise, one feeling united them all: fear. Rome had never been this close to collapse. The chief priest, Marcus Aemilius, stood before the Senate. "We have offended the gods," he said in a trembling voice. "This disaster is punishment. We must seek their forgiveness, at any cost." Outside, the bells of the temple of Vesta rang, echoing through the streets. The sacred flame flickered, a bad omen. Rome's spiritual protectors, the Vestal Virgins, gathered, their white robes glowing in torchlight. Even they could feel something dark was coming. At dawn, the priests gathered at the temple of Jupiter. Incense filled the air, but their faces were pale. The chief augur, Lucius Fabius, had performed sacred readings, observing the flight of birds and the entrails of sacrificed animals. The signs were terrible. The gods demand atonement. Lucius announced to the Senate, "Blood for blood, purity for sin." His voice trembled as he spoke. He then revealed something no one expected: the old ritual known as the burying of the living. According to ancient law, when Rome faced destruction from foreign enemies, two pairs, a man and woman from Rome and another from Greece, were to be buried alive. It was believed their sacrifice would restore divine balance. The Senate gasped. "Barbaric superstition," one senator shouted. But the priest remained firm. "Would you rather see Hannibal at your gates?" The Senate fell silent. A grim decree spread across the city: the gods demand the pure. Roman officials were ordered to find those who could serve as living offerings. The chosen ones had to be Vestal Virgins. Women vowed to remain untouched by men, the symbol of Rome's purity. Guards searched the houses of the Vestals. Finally, they found Claudia, a young and gentle Vestal known for her kindness, and Aelia, a strong-willed woman with deep faith. Both were brought before the priests. "Why us?" Claudia whispered, tears in her eyes. "Because the gods see your hearts," Marcus Aemilius replied. The city murmured with fear and fascination. Some whispered that the ritual was madness. Others said it was the only hope left. That night, the air was heavy and still. In the underground chamber beneath the Temple of the Earth, candles flickered as the priests prepared the ritual. The walls were carved with ancient symbols of life and death. Claudia sat quietly, holding a small clay charm, a gift from her mother long ago. Beside her, Aelia prayed aloud, her voice steady. "If this saves Rome, then let it be." Marcus Aemilius visited them one last time. His face showed deep conflict, part priest, part man haunted by guilt. "Forgive me, daughters of Rome," he said softly. Above ground, the people of Rome waited in silence. The city that once roared with pride now held its breath. At sunrise, the ritual began. A crowd gathered near the Field of Mars, where a deep pit had been dug, lined with stones and covered with a wooden roof. Priests chanted as the Vestals walked forward, their faces calm but pale. The chief priest raised his hands. "Let this act cleanse our city," he declared. The crowd murmured prayers. Some wept, others turned away. Claudia looked toward the rising sun. "May Rome never forget us," she whispered. Then, slowly, the entrance was sealed. The sound of stones falling echoed like thunder. Silence followed, deep, eternal. The ritual was complete. Above, the Senate announced that the gods had been satisfied. Yet even as the sun rose, a shadow of guilt remained over the heart of Rome. The next morning, Rome awoke to an eerie silence. The sacrifice was over, but the city felt colder, heavier. Markets opened late. People spoke in whispers, afraid the gods might still be listening. Old women lit candles at their doors, while soldiers crossing the forum made the sign of protection. Some said they had seen strange lights in the sky that night, red and blue flickers dancing above the temple roofs. In the Senate, Senator Drusus addressed the council. Rome is cleansed, he declared. Now we must rebuild our armies. But not all agreed. Many senators felt haunted. The cries of the buried women still echoed in their minds. The temple. Marcus Aemilius stared at the extinguished torches. He had done what tradition demanded, but his soul felt poisoned. Was this truly the God's will? He muttered. Or our fear pretending to be faith? Days turned to weeks, yet peace never came. The Tiber River overflowed its banks, flooding homes. Lightning struck the temple of Jupiter, splitting its roof in two. People screamed, "The gods are still angry." Marcus Aemilius ordered more rituals, sacrifices of animals, incense offerings, and endless prayers. But the omens only grew worse. A statue of Mars toppled on its own during a ceremony. Claudia and Aelia's names began to be spoken as martyrs. Women placed flowers near the field of Mars, calling them the pure ones. Lucius Fabius warned the Senate, "Until Rome faces her enemy with courage, no offering will heal her." But few listened. Fear ruled more than faith now. Far from Rome, on the plains of Italy, Hannibal Barca stood with his army, calm, confident. Elephants marched behind him, their armor glinting in the sun. His generals reported Rome's panic. "They bury their own people now," one laughed. Hannibal's eyes narrowed. "Fear makes men weak," he said, "but it also makes them dangerous." In Rome, scouts brought word. Hannibal moves closer to the city. Panic returned. The bells of the temples rang once again. General Varro, one of the survivors of Cannae, promised vengeance. "Rome has fallen to fear once," he said, "but never again." The Senate authorized the largest army ever raised. Every man over 17 was ordered to fight. Late one night, Marcus Aemilius climbed the Capitoline Hill alone. The city below slept, glowing with dim torchlight. He entered the silent temple and knelt before Jupiter's statue. "I have done everything," he whispered, "but I no longer feel the gods." His hands trembled. For the first time, he questioned everything he had believed. "Maybe it was never the gods who demanded blood," he said softly. "Maybe it was our fear wearing their mask." Lucius Fabius appeared behind him. "Then let your faith change," he said. "If we cannot trust the gods, we must trust Rome itself." It was the first spark of a new thought, that perhaps Rome's power came not from the heavens, but from her people. The next morning, the Senate gathered in full assembly. The air was tense, but determined. General Varro stood tall before the crowd. "We have buried enough. Now we fight." Senator Drusus rose. "We swear before the gods and before the spirits of those who died, Rome will never surrender." From the temples to the markets, the same words echoed. Rome will never surrender. Citizens lined the streets as new legions marched out, shields shining, banners high. The people began to believe again, not in divine mercy, but in Roman strength. Marcus Aemilius watched from the temple steps. "Perhaps this," he said, "is the true offering the gods wanted, courage." Weeks passed, and slowly, Rome began to rise again. The streets were no longer silent. Blacksmiths forged new swords. Farmers returned to their fields. Even laughter returned to the markets. At the temple of Vesta, the sacred flame, once dimmed by fear, burned brighter than ever. The new Vestal Virgins, chosen after the tragedy, tended to it with care and pride. Marcus Aemilius stood before them, his old robes faded but his heart renewed. "Faith is not sacrifice," he told them softly. "Faith is endurance." Citizens came to offer flowers instead of blood. The gods, it seemed, were silent, but their silence felt peaceful, not angry. Rome had found a new kind of holiness, one that came from courage, not fear. Despite Rome's recovery, whispers still haunted the night. Some said the spirits of Claudia and Aelia walked near the field of Mars, dressed in white, blessing soldiers who passed. A young soldier swore he saw them before battle, two figures standing under the moonlight, hands raised in peace. They smiled, he said, not in anger, but in farewell. Priests began calling them the daughters of Rome. Every year, small offerings of flowers and candles appeared near their resting place. No longer symbols of fear, they became symbols of sacrifice and purity. Marcus Aemilius visited their tomb. "You gave your lives for our weakness," he whispered. Now Rome must prove worthy of your courage. The Senate no longer feared the gods' anger. Now they feared losing the people's trust. Rome had learned that divine rituals alone could not protect her. General Vero, once disgraced at Cannae, led new victories in southern Italy. When he returned to Rome, the people cheered not as worshippers, but as equals. We stand together, he said. Rome survives because Rome believes in Rome. Lucius Fabius, the augur, observed this change quietly. Perhaps the gods were testing us, he said to Marcus Aemilius. Not for faith in them, but for faith in ourselves. The city began rebuilding temples, not as places of fear, but as symbols of community. Children played again in the forum. The flame of Vesta glowed strong. Even as Rome celebrated, Hannibal was not gone. His army still roamed Italy, undefeated in open battle. Towns burned. Fields were taken. The shadow of Carthage lingered like a storm waiting to return. Messengers brought reports to the Senate. Hannibal is near Capua. His spies move within our walls. Senator Drusus stood firm. Let him come, he said. He will not find the same Rome. Meanwhile, Marcus Aemilius led prayers, not of fear, but of courage. We offer not bodies, he said, but our will to stand. In the south, Hannibal gazed toward Rome from a distant hill. They should have fallen by now, he muttered. But what he didn't understand was this. Rome's greatest weapon was no longer her army. It was her unbroken spirit. Years after the burial, Rome stood stronger than ever. The wounds of Cannae had healed, and the memory of fear turned into resolve. The priests gathered once more in the temple of Jupiter. Marcus Aemilius, now old and frail, raised his staff. The gods once demanded lives, he said. Now, they ask for our courage, our duty, our honor. He ordered the offering of bread, wine, and olive branches, symbols of life. The people joined, cheering as music filled the temple. No blood, no fear, only hope. That night, a bright star appeared over Rome. The augurs called it the Star of Aelia and Claudia. For the first time in years, Rome slept peacefully. The call to arms echoed through the streets of Rome once more. Boys who had been children during the horror of Cannae were now men, ready to fight. General Vero, once disgraced, led the legions towards southern Italy. This time, he said to his men, we march not for revenge, but for Rome. The battle that followed was fierce. Dust filled the air. Swords clashed. Shields splintered. The cries of the wounded blended with the thunder of war. But the Romans did not break this time. When the sun set, Hannibal's army retreated. Rome had won, not a final victory, but a turning point. The people back home wept with pride. For the first time in years, Rome believed again that she could not die. That night, under the stars, soldiers lit torches and gathered in silence. They spoke of their fallen brothers, their lost families, and the women buried years ago to save the city. One young soldier, Marcus Felix, whispered, if they could see us now, they would know Rome endured. An older centurion replied, they already know. They walk with us. The wind rose, carrying the faint sound of temple bells, though there were none nearby. Many said the spirits of Claudia and Aelia watched over them, their purity guiding Rome's blade. Marcus Aemilius, far away in Rome, awoke that same night. He felt a calm presence near him, two gentle voices whispering, you did not fail. Years passed, and Rome's fortunes turned. Hannibal's army shrank. The Senate grew stronger. But Marcus Aemilius had grown old and weak. His once steady hands trembled as he poured oil over the temple flame. Lucius Fabius visited him often. The city stands, he said. Your faith kept it alive. But Marcus shook his head. Not my faith, he replied softly. Theirs, the people's. On his final night, he climbed the temple steps one last time. The stars above shone bright, the same stars that had watched Rome's darkest hour. He whispered to the wind, forgive us, and bless what we have become. Then, quietly, he collapsed beside the sacred flame, his duty complete. Word spread like wildfire. Hannibal has been defeated. The Battle of Zama had ended it all. Rome's general Scipio Africanus had crushed Carthage's greatest warrior. Crowds flooded the streets, chanting, Rome eternal, Rome unbroken. Statues were raised. Songs were sung. But amid the celebration, some still remembered the price. The virgins, the soldiers, the fear that had once ruled them. Lucius Fabius stood on the balcony overlooking the forum. "We won not just a war," he said, "but our soul." The city that had once buried its own daughters now celebrated life, strength, and the power of unity. Years after Rome's triumph, the sacred flame still burned. Children who knew nothing of Cannae or Hannibal played near the temple, laughing as they watched the Vestal Virgins carry torches through the streets. Lucius Fabius, now the oldest priest, told them stories. "Once, Rome feared the gods," he said, smiling. "Now, Rome honors them through courage." He pointed to the flame. "This fire burns because of those who gave everything, not to please the gods, but to save the city they loved." At sunset, the wind carried the sound of bells once more, gentle, like a whisper from the past. Some said it was just the wind. Others said it was Claudia and Aelia, smiling upon their city, at peace at last. Centuries passed. The story of the two Vestals, Claudia and Aelia, became legend. Children whispered their names in bedtime tales. Poets wrote songs of their sacrifice. In the great schools of Rome, teachers spoke of them not with fear, but with pride. "They gave everything for Rome," they said. "Their courage saved our world." Marble statues were built in their honor, showing two serene faces looking toward the sky. Travelers from far provinces bowed before them, leaving flowers at their feet. The fear that once haunted Rome had turned into wisdom. The story of the buried virgins became a reminder that even in madness, humanity can find meaning, and that the gods' silence often hides their greatest lesson: faith without cruelty. Centuries later, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Egypt. New temples rose, new gods were worshipped, but deep within the heart of Rome, the old flame still burned. Emperor Marcus Aurelius once visited the ancient shrine of Vesta. Standing before the eternal flame, he asked the priest, "Do you still remember their names?" The priest smiled softly. "We remember every day." The emperor nodded. "Then Rome still remembers herself." That night, he wrote in his journal, "Faith is not fear of death, but the courage to live rightly." The legend of the virgins lived on, woven into Rome's identity, a quiet heartbeat beneath the empire's thunder. As centuries passed, the old gods of Rome faded. Temples cracked. The fires of Vesta dimmed. New faiths rose, faiths of compassion, forgiveness, and hope. Yet even as Christianity spread, the Romans still spoke softly of the ancient days. The story of the virgins became a moral parable, not of superstition, but of what happens when fear replaces understanding. A monk writing by candlelight recorded their tale. Once, Rome buried her daughters to please her gods. Now, she prays for their souls, and for her own. In that moment, the tale transformed, no longer tragedy, but redemption. Rome had learned that even divine fear must one day bow to human mercy. In later centuries, a small church was built over the ruins of the old temple of Vesta. Inside it burned a single candle, said to have been lit from the last sacred flame of Rome. Pilgrims came to see it, calling it the Light of the Virgins. They prayed not for victory or favor, but for peace. An old priest explained, "The gods change, but truth remains." They taught us fear. Christ teaches us love. Yet both began with sacrifice. Above the altar, a carving showed two young women standing together, Claudia and Aelia, hands joined, faces calm. Rome had changed forever, but their story still glowed, eternal as the flame itself. Night falls over modern Rome. The Colosseum stands in silent glory, and the ruins of ancient temples rest under the city lights. Tourists walk where senators once argued and priests once wept. At the site of the old temple of Vesta, a guide tells a small crowd, long ago, when Rome feared destruction, two women were buried alive to save her. The crowd grows quiet. In the distance, a soft wind passes through the ruins, like a sigh from another time. For a moment, it feels as though two faint figures stand among the stones, watching the city that never died. And then they fade into the night, their story complete, their sacrifice eternal.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel Every Story Beats with a Lesson for more amazing history stories. And tell us in the comments what you thought about this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.